Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome to tonight's calming science sleep story. Wherever you're watching from, whether it's your cozy bed, a quiet living room, or somewhere far across the world, I'm so grateful you're here. Take a deep breath. Let the noise of the day gently fade away. Tonight, we're going on a peaceful journey deep beneath your feet to explore how volcanoes are formed, why the Earth's crust moves, and how hidden rivers of molten rock shape the world. Together, we'll discover the mysteries of the Earth's fiery heartbeat, how something as powerful as a volcano can also be part of the planet's natural balance. And if you enjoy slow, thoughtful journeys like this, don't forget to softly subscribe to the channel, so we can explore more wonders of the universe together, night after night. Now, close your eyes, relax your body, and let's begin this gentle descent into the hidden rhythms of the Earth. Beneath the quiet ground, your planet hums softly. Deep rivers of molten rock shift and breathe. You begin a gentle descent into Earth's secret layers, where warmth, pressure, and ancient forces cradle the world. The surface feels still, but beneath, Earth is alive as you rest, breathing slowly. Let your imagination drift down beneath your feet, away from the soft fabric of your bed, slipping past the walls of your room, through the floors, the soil, the rock, deeper still, into the hidden world that holds the very heartbeat of this planet. The ground that feels so steady beneath you is only the outermost skin, a fragile shell compared to the vastness beneath. You are sinking now, weightless, quiet, through layers of stone and sediment, layers that hold stories older than any human memory, fragments of ancient oceans, mountains, long eroded, the footprints of life that came and went before your kind ever opened. Curious eyes to the sky, you feel the warmth begin to grow as you pass through the crust, a layer thinner than you might have imagined, like the skin of an apple wrapped around the fruit. Just a few dozen kilometers, and then the shift. The texture of the world changes. The solid rock begins to soften, to flow, not like water, not like air, but like something in between, a strange, slow fluidity that only time can reveal. This is the mantle, Earth's deep living body, where rock behaves like honey. Stretched across centuries, you float here now, gently rocked by the great convection currents that stir this unseen ocean of stone. Imagine slow rivers of heat rising from far below, while cooler masses sink downward, creating patterns, vast looping currents that shift continents, build mountains, and open oceans. It feels peaceful here, slow, eternal, but also filled with quiet power. These currents are driven by the Earth's inner warmth, heat left over from the planet's chaotic birth billions of years ago, and heat still being generated now, quietly, steadily, as atoms deep within the Earth break apart, releasing energy in a process older than life itself. This is the fire within, not the quick fire of flame, but a deep, patient heat, the warmth of a planet still cooling, still breathing. As you drift deeper, you notice how the mantle's warmth pushes upward in places, melting the rock into glowing streams of molten stone called magma. Some of this magma gathers in vast chambers, waiting, pressing, shaping the story of the surface above, without anyone knowing. You begin to understand how every mountain, every coastline, every quiet hill owes its existence to the slow movements beneath, a gentle but unstoppable reshaping of the world. Look around and see how the Earth's outer shell is not a single solid piece. It is broken into giant puzzle pieces, called tectonic plates, each floating on the mantle's soft currents. These plates slide slowly past each other, collide, or drift apart, their movements invisible to a single lifetime, but undeniable over the ages. Where plates meet, pressure builds a tension stored quietly for centuries, sometimes for millennia, until suddenly that pressure releases, reshaping the land in a moment. Some places become towering mountains, others split open into deep ocean trenches, and sometimes the Earth opens a doorway to its inner fire, a volcano. But not yet, not here. For now you float suspended in this hidden ocean of stone, tracing the deep breath of the planet. Above you, continents ride these currents like silent rafts. You imagine them moving, South America drifting slowly west, Africa splitting apart along a hidden rift, the Pacific shrinking, inch by inch, movements measured not in days or years, but in the quiet rhythm of millions of years. Your own body, resting gently on the surface, has always been part of this motion, whether you knew it or not. Even the ground beneath your home was shaped by forces deep beneath, built from ancient lava flows, crushed by moving plates, lifted or sunk by the breathing mantle below. As you float, you become aware of the boundaries between these plates, places where the Earth's crust is thinner, weaker, where magma has a chance to rise. These are special zones, places where the deep warmth reaches toward the sky. You imagine one now, a spot where the mantle's heat grows stronger, melting the base of the crust, forming a pool of molten rock that gathers quietly, pressing upward, testing the strength of the stone above. Some of these molten pockets will never reach the surface, others they will wait patiently centuries, perhaps until pressure and weakness align and the earth opens. But that story belongs to another part of this journey. For now, you simply listen to the deep, slow creak of rock under unimaginable pressure, to the whisper of heat moving through solid stone like water, through roots, to the ancient heartbeat of a planet that never truly sleeps. The warmth here feels comforting, not dangerous but steady, reliable, the same warmth that powers the growth of continents, the rise of mountains, and the creation of the very soil beneath your feet. Even the air you breathe has been shaped by this deep inner fire, for volcanoes long ago helped craft the atmosphere itself, releasing gases from the Earth's interior into the open sky, creating the balance of air, water, and life you now depend upon. As you float in this vast shadowed world, it becomes clear volcanoes are not just sudden eruptions of fire and ash. They are part of something bigger, something slower, a cycle of creation and transformation that has shaped every inch of the world, you know. You begin to rise now, drifting slowly upward, tracing the paths where molten rock quietly gathers beneath the crust, following the gentle pull toward the places where fire meets sky. You wonder what happens when that molten rock finds a crack, a weakness, when the pressure builds too high to be contained, when the earth itself decides to breathe out fire. Sink deeper now into the thick flowing mantle, a place where solid rock behaves like soft honey over time. Slow, powerful currents move continents and mountains. You float in this unseen ocean of warmth and quiet motion. Earth's heartbeat pulses gently through this hidden sea. As you drift further downward, your body lighter than thought, you begin to feel the deep embrace of the mantle. A place most humans never truly imagine, yet one that holds the quiet power to shape everything above. You are floating now in a vast ocean of stone, not stone as you know it, hard, unyielding, cold, but stone softened by pressure, warmed by time, flowing in slow, steady currents like syrup poured over a million years. It is strange and beautiful here. A world where opposites meet, where something solid behaves like a liquid, where motion exists but so slowly, so patiently, that it feels like the very definition of eternity. All around you the mantle breathes, not with air but with heat, a silent pulse rising from the earth's deep core far below, traveling upward like invisible tides of warmth. You notice how this heat is not wild, not chaotic, but calm, steady, ancient, the leftover energy of Earth's fiery birth, mixed with the constant, quiet release of radioactive decay, tiny particles breaking apart within the minerals, sending out little bursts of warmth that ripple through this vast hidden sea. The mantle itself stretches from just below the crust, the thin outer shell. You have already passed down nearly 3,000 kilometers toward the outer core. Imagine that, an ocean of rock so deep it could swallow 10 Mount Everests, stacked end to end, yet here you float as light as a breath. Watching the patterns unfold, you begin to see them now, enormous loops of moving rock, slow convection cells that behave like water heated in a pot. Where heat rises, the rock expands, becomes slightly lighter, and drifts upward, carrying with it energy, minerals, and the seeds of future mountains and volcanoes. Where it cools near the crust, it sinks back down heavier now, folding quietly into the deep again. These vast circular currents are the hidden engines of the earth, invisible from the surface, but responsible for the movement of continents, the birth of islands, and the rise of volcanoes. You drift alongside one of these currents now, following the slow upward path. Where warmer material rises, it feels gentle, like riding a thermal breeze, except this breeze is made of solid rock, softened by time and pressure into something that flows like a dream. As you rise with the current, you notice how in some places this heat creates weakness in the crust above. These are hot spots, places where the mantle's warmth is focused, melting rock into magma, creating quiet reservoirs of fire that wait beneath the surface, sometimes for thousands of years. But the mantle is not always gentle. Sometimes where the convection currents pull apart the crust above, stretches thin, opening great cracks on the ocean floor, letting molten rock pour out like rivers in the dark, forming long ridges that wind across the seafloor like stitches on a planet-sized quilt. You imagine yourself floating along one of these ridges now, watching as fresh lava oozes from the earth's deep veins, cooling quickly as it touches cold sea water, becoming new crust, a quiet, constant act of creation hidden beneath the waves. Elsewhere, where currents push plates together, the crust crumples, folds, and one plate is forced beneath another in a process called subduction. You watch now as one slab of ocean crust slides slowly downward, sinking back into the mantle from which it once came. As it descends, water carried within the minerals is released, lowering the melting point of the surrounding rock, creating pockets of magma that begin to rise toward the surface. These are the seeds of volcanoes near continental edges, the fiery breath of Earth, preparing quietly, patiently for a future eruption. It strikes you how nothing here is wasted, no movement, meaningless. Everything folds back into the cycle. Crust becomes mantle, mantle becomes magma, magma becomes land, and land over time will be broken, weathered, and drawn back into the depths. Once more, the planet is endlessly reshaping itself, not in a rush, but in a slow rhythmic dance measured in millions of years. The ocean floor spreads open, mountains rise, trenches deepen, and always the mantle's whisper guides it all. You begin to sense just how interconnected it all is, how the warmth deep beneath your feet influences the winds above, the patterns of rainfall, the fertility of soils, the placement of islands, and even the path of evolution itself. Without this deep, slow churning, there would be no continents, no oceans, no life as you know it. You hover now near the boundary where the mantle meets the crust, feeling the gentle press of rising heat, the soft movement of molten rock, gathering, pooling, looking for weakness, for a pathway upward. You begin to understand that this is where volcanoes are born, not in sudden violence but in patient preparation, the quiet gathering of Earth's warmth into pockets of molten stone that sit sometimes for thousands of years, waiting until the right moment comes. Above you, the crust remains solid but thin, delicate compared to the power beneath. Somewhere along a fault line, or under a mountain, or beneath the ocean floor, a chamber is filling, slowly, persistently. You imagine that chamber, now a pocket of fire nestled within the stone, growing, stretching, pressing against the weight of the world above. You wonder, how long will it wait? How long until the fire beneath decides it is time to rise? You rise toward the surface, toward the crust. Thin, delicate, and broken, massive plates drift quietly, carried by the mantle's slow breath. Where edges meet, stress gathers, waiting to be released. You trace the silent lines of tension, faults, fractures, and boundaries. Here the seeds of mountains, quakes, and volcanoes quietly grow. As you slowly ascend back toward the surface, your awareness shifts to the fragile outer skin of the planet, the crust. This thin layer floating atop the soft moving mantle is where everything you know and everything you have ever seen takes place. The forests, the cities, the mountains and oceans, they all exist on this narrow, brittle shell, and yet this crust is not a single, unbroken piece. It is a collection of giant plates that drift, slide, and collide in response to the deep mantle's slow but steady breath. These tectonic plates are always moving quietly, relentlessly, carried like rafts upon the warm, flowing currents below you. Float now alongside the boundaries, where these plates meet, where the crust thins, fractures, and gives way to immense forces. Stress accumulates slowly over centuries as plates press into one another or pull apart, forming deep cracks, called faults, invisible from above, but stretching like hidden scars through the Earth's skin. You glide along one, now sensing how the pressure builds, silent and invisible, until one day it is released in a sudden quake or an eruption, reshaping the surface in moments. You see how continents have split apart, pulled by the mantle's gentle tug, creating vast rift valleys where the ground stretches open, exposing the deeper layers below. Elsewhere, plates collide, crumpling the crust into towering mountains, their peaks reaching for the sky, while deep below the roots sink into the mantle, pressing, heating, and melting. The boundaries between plates are not just lines of weakness, they are places where the Earth creates and transforms. You sense the slow formation of magma beneath subduction, zones where one plate sinks beneath another, dragged down into the heat, releasing water and gases into the mantle above, lowering its melting point and allowing rock to melt into magma, ready to rise toward the surface. And sometimes, along these boundaries, cracks open directly into the mantle below, allowing streams of molten rock to flow upward, quietly at first, then with growing pressure, seeking a path to escape. You imagine one such pathway now, a narrow conduit where magma slowly rises, gathering in chambers beneath the surface, pressing against the brittle crust, waiting for the moment it can break free. The crust is thin here, thinner than most realize, stretched under the strain of the mantle's restless movements, a reminder that the solid ground beneath your feet is not as permanent as it feels. It bends, it breaks, it yields to the quiet power beneath. You wonder now what happens when the pressure is finally too much, when the molten rock finds its way upward, when the Earth's fire reaches for the sky. Follow the molten rock as it finds a weakness, a way out. Pressure builds, rock melts, and Earth prepares to exhale. You hover inside a volcano's hidden chamber, cradled in heat. Soon the fire beneath will meet the sky above a slow rumbling birth, written in fire and stone. As you drift deeper toward the warmth beneath the crust, you begin to feel it more clearly now, the quiet gathering of pressure, the subtle stretching of the brittle stone above, as molten rock stirs and swells hidden beneath the surface. For hundreds, even thousands of years it waits silent, but never still, tucked into chambers of fire carved within the body of the earth. This is not chaos, this is preparation, a slow, patient rising of energy shaped by time, by heat, by the endless breath of the planet itself. You imagine yourself now floating inside one of these chambers, a glowing cavern surrounded by walls of solid rock that press back, holding the molten heart within for as long as they can. The magma here is thick and alive. It churns, slowly swirling like honey, warmed by a distant flame, rich with minerals, heavy with the secrets of the deep mantle. Each bubble, each ripple within this molten sea carries whispers of the journey it has taken, rising from depths where pressures crush and temperatures burn through stone, melting minerals, blending gases, transforming solid rock into liquid fire. You hover here gently, weightless, safe as you observe this ancient process. The heat radiates around you, yet it does not harm. Instead, it feels like being wrapped in the warmth of the earth itself, a reminder that this force is not merely destruction, but also creation. You notice now how the magma chamber expands quietly, pressing against the crust above, searching, testing the strength of the stone for weakness, for a fault, for a fracture to open and release the fire within. Over time, gases trapped within the magma begin to gather, rising toward the top of the chamber, like bubbles in a bottle of soda. As more magma rises from the mantle below, it brings with it more gases, carbon dioxide, sulfur, water vapor, all dissolved under immense pressure. Together, they form a volatile mixture, a delicate balance of liquid stone and trapped breath, waiting. When pressure becomes too great, the rock above can no longer hold it, bends it, fractures it, begins to crack. Fine lines at first, then larger breaks, widening, splitting, trembling under the strain. You sense it now, the quiet before the release, the moment where the earth holds its breath, when all the forces beneath are balanced on the edge. Between the pressure pushing upward and the resistance of the stone above, something has to give. As the crust weakens, the magma surges upward, following paths of least resistance, squeezing through narrow fissures that grow wider with every passing moment. It is not always a violent rush. Sometimes it begins slowly, quietly, with small amounts of gas-rich magma forcing its way toward the surface, creating a dome or a bulge swelling the land above. Other times the release is sudden, a deep shudder, a fracture that splits wide, allowing molten rock to shoot skyward, carrying ash gases and fragments of ancient stone into the open air. You follow, now tracing the path of the magma as it rises, moving through conduits shaped by the history of the land. The walls of this pathway glow orange with heat. Veins of minerals crystallize as the molten rock passes, leaving behind streaks of quartz, sulfur, and iron, marking the passage of fire through stone. The deeper the magma rises, the less pressure holds the gases in solution. Bubbles expand rapidly, turning liquid magma into frothy lava light enough to explode upward, carrying vast clouds of ash, pumice, and fire into the sky above the ground. The first signs appear: a subtle trembling, a rumble felt more than heard. Animals sense it long before humans. Tiny vibrations pass through roots, through rock, through water. Then a sudden venting of gas, a plume of steam rising where none was before. Cracks widen in the ground, releasing the breath of the deep, until the moment arrives when the earth exhales completely and the volcano is born. With a thunderous roar, magma breaks free, shooting into the air, a fountain of fire glowing against the darkened sky. Ash follows, carried on rising columns of superheated gas, rising kilometers into the air. Lightning flickers within the ash cloud, static charge built from countless tiny collisions of dust and rock and ice. The sky darkens, not with night, but with the breath of the earth itself, a temporary twilight created by clouds of ash drifting high above, cooling the sunlight, turning day into dusk. You float here now, watching as rivers of lava spill From the crater, glowing red, orange, yellow, flowing downhill, following valleys, filling hollows, building new land where none existed before. The air trembles with sound, the deep, continuous roar of escaping gases, the crackle of cooling lava, the hissing of steam as molten rock meets water, meets snow, meets life. The eruption can last minutes, hours, days, even weeks, depending on the chamber below and the forces at play. Sometimes it begins with explosive violence clearing the throat of the volcano, followed by quieter, effusive eruptions, rivers of lava flowing smoothly across the land. Other times it is a continuous cycle, pulses of pressure releasing over and over, building new mountains, forming new islands, changing coastlines, reshaping the world. The heat, the energy, the material that bursts forth carries not only destruction, but also the raw ingredients for creation. Rich minerals within the lava begin to cool, solidify, and eventually break down into fertile soil. Ash carried on the wind will fall across vast landscapes, nourishing the ground, feeding forests, fields, and future life. Long after the eruption quiets, the land will begin to heal. Life will return, often more abundant than before, drawn by the richness of volcanic soil. Yet here in this moment, as the fire still flows, the transformation is not yet complete. The earth continues to breathe out, reshaping its skin, letting the deep warmth rise and touch the sky. As you drift gently above this scene, you begin to wonder, what happens when the eruption fades, when the fire settles, when the roaring breath becomes a soft whisper, and the earth returns to silence, at least for a while. Pressure can no longer hold. Molten rock explodes skyward, painting the sky in ash and flame. You drift among clouds of fire, dust, and lightning. A breathtaking, terrifying, yet strangely beautiful release from deep within. Earth shares its ancient breath with the world. As you drift gently above the trembling land, something deep below shifts, a final push, a final breath of pressure, and the earth can hold no more. There is a sudden shudder, a wave that rolls not only through the stone but through the air, through the water, through everything. A moment hangs suspended, a silence that feels deeper than anything before it. And then, with a force both graceful and immense, the surface fractures, the mountain splits, the earth tears open, and from that wound rises the first pulse of fire. A plume of molten rock shoots into the sky, glowing brighter than the sun, painting the clouds with gold and crimson. A roar follows, so deep, so primal, it feels less like sound and more like the voice of the planet itself. The ground shakes, the air trembles, trees bend, waves ripple across distant lakes, and the mountain bellows as though waking from 1,000 years of sleep. Molten rock bursts skyward, carried by expanding gases that were once locked deep within the mantle. Bubbles, growing bubbles, rising bubbles, exploding, turning liquid stone into fountains of lava and sprays of glowing fragments. You drift closer, watching as pieces of the mountain are hurled miles into the air, fragments of ancient rock now weightless, caught in the thermal breath of the eruption. Ash begins to rise, not softly, not like the gentle drift of snow, but in a towering column, climbing higher and higher until it touches the edges of the sky. This ash is not just dust, it is pulverized rock, shards of crystals, tiny fragments of magma cooled instantly by the air. A dark cloud forms, billowing outward, shading the land for miles. Around, sunlight becomes dim, the world shifts to a quiet twilight painted in tones of gray and orange and silver. Lightning crackles within the ash cloud, a strange electric storm born from the collision of countless tiny particles, each rubbing against the next, charging the air with static energy. A flash, then another, a sudden branching bolt that leaps from the cloud to the ground, striking with a sound sharper than thunder. You float among it all, weightless, silent, untouched by the chaos, yet fully immersed in the grandeur of it. Rivers of lava begin to pour from the fracture, flowing like glowing blood down the flanks of the mountain, following paths carved by gravity, melting forests as they move, igniting everything in their way. Rocks hiss as the lava flows over them, trees burst into flame, the sound of strange mixture of crackling, popping, and the low constant roar of moving molten stone. The air shimmers with heat waves dancing, bending the view, turning the world into a liquid mirage where nothing stays still. Yet in this destruction you begin to see something else, something quieter, something hidden within the chaos. Every particle of ash, every drop of lava carries minerals and elements drawn from deep within the earth, things that have not touched the surface for millions of years. Iron, silica, magnesium, gases that once were trapped inside the planet's belly, now free, released into the sky, into the soil, into the sea. You drift higher, watching as the eruption builds, reaching its peak. Columns of ash rise 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, even more, spreading out at the top into a wide umbrella shape, the classic form of a Plinian eruption, named for the ancient witness who first described such power. Beneath this cloud, the sky rains ash, fine and powdery, or sharp and gritty depending on how far it travels, settling on rooftops, coating rivers, blanketing fields, darkening the world, but feeding it to for this ash, though choking, though heavy, will one day become rich soil, feeding plants, forests, crops. Life. Lightning continues to crackle through the cloud, each strike a reminder that even the sky itself is part of the eruption. In the crater where the eruption began, fountains of lava continue to pulse, surging, rising, splashing against the rim, only to fall back, feeding the rivers that spread outward. Some flows are fast, racing downhill. Others slow, thick and heavy, oozing across the landscape like glowing tar, building new ground as they cool and harden, turning liquid fire into solid rock. Step by step, moment by moment, a pyroclastic flow forms, now a terrifying wave of superheated gas, ash, and volcanic rock, denser than air, moving faster than air, moving faster than a hurricane, a ground-hugging avalanche that races down the mountain slopes, devouring everything in its path, moving silently at first, then with a deep rolling sound, like the breath of the earth itself, a cloud of death to anything living, yet a sculptor of the landscape, carving valleys, filling basins, reshaping the world. You drift just above this wave, close enough to feel the immense heat, yet safe in your weightless observation. The flow races outward, slowing only when it has spent its force, blanketing the lowlands with meters of ash and debris. In the distance you see the sky shift, the column of ash beginning to collapse, part of it falling back to earth as the eruption changes shape, pressure releasing not in the upward explosion, but in outward surges of gas and rock. The eruption begins to wane, but it is not over, not yet. Lava continues to pour from fissures, some cracks opening far from the main crater, forming new vents, new fountains, new rivers, where none existed before. The mountain itself changes its shape, collapsing in places, swelling in others. The summit may fall inward, creating a caldera, a vast crater left behind. Where once there was a peak, you hover here, feeling the shift, the breathing out of the earth, turning now from the roar of release to the softer, steady flow of cooling lava, to the gentle fall of ash, like a strange heavy snow covering the world in shades of gray and silver and black. Even as the fire fades, steam begins to rise, clouds of it billowing. Where lava meets water, rivers, oceans, or even underground ice, the hiss is constant, a sharp reminder that even in cooling the volcano speaks. Water flashes instantly to vapor, blasting jets of steam into the air, sometimes causing secondary explosions where trapped pockets of water suddenly boil, expanding with violent force, sending chunks of rock flying into this landscape of fire, steam, ash, and lightning. Life will return, not now, not yet, but soon. Seeds carried by the wind will settle into the ash, microbes will begin their patient work, breaking down the fresh rock into soil. Rain will fall, rivers will carve new paths across the hardened flows, and in time, what was once a scene of destruction will become a cradle of life, richer, more fertile than before. As you float gently above it all, watching the fire cool the clouds, thin the lava harden, you begin to sense the deeper truth. The eruption is not simply an end, it is a transformation, a necessary release, a cleansing breath of the earth itself. What was hidden is now revealed, what was sealed is now shared, what was old is broken, what is new is waiting. The earth grows and breathes in cycles, sometimes with quiet, sometimes with fire, and as this chapter of fire begins to soften into silence, you begin to wonder what comes after, when the ash settles, when the fire fades, when the land begins its long, gentle journey back toward life again. The roar fades, silence returns, a landscape remade, black rivers of lava, gray blankets of ash, yet beneath the destruction, something gentle stirs. Life waits quietly, ready to return, to rebuild. From the ashes the cycle of fire and rebirth begins again. The fire has quieted the thunder of the eruption, has softened into a deep, heavy silence. The sky no longer filled with glowing embers, but with a curtain of fine ash drifting, slowly settling, gently like the soft fall of snow, but darker, heavier. Grayer the mountain stands, changed its face, reshaped its summit, lowered its flanks, covered in fresh rivers of blackened lava, cooling, slowly releasing soft curls of steam that rise lazily into the still air. The land below lies buried beneath a Thick blanket of ash fields, forests, rivers, now hidden, muted, made uniform by this grey dust that covers everything like a memory of fire stretched out across the earth. You drift gently above it all, feeling the strange quiet that follows the storm. Of the eruption, the way the world seems to hold its breath. No birds, no voices, no movement, except for the lazy swirl of ash, and the occasional hiss of steam where hot rock still meets. Hidden pockets of moisture beneath this silence, however, something stirs, not yet seen, not yet heard, but present, waiting. The ground is warm still. Beneath the ash a gentle heat, radiating from the cooling lava, flows from the deeper magma chambers, now settling back into stillness. The air smells of sulfur and minerals, sharp yet somehow clean scrubbed by the winds that carried the ash clouds across the sky. You notice how the landscape, though scarred, though silent, holds a kind of quiet beauty. The smooth flowing lines of hardened lava, the soft rolling shapes of ash dunes sculpted by wind, the glint of newly formed minerals crystallized from the cooling gases that escaped during the eruption. The land feels fragile now, yet also renewed, emptied out in one way, but made ready for something new beneath. The ash seeds that were buried are now insulated, protected from the heat by this blanket of dust, some carried by the wind, some waiting for years dormant, now sensing the subtle change that tells them soon it will be time to wake, time for rain to fall, to soften the ash, to carry nutrients downward, to create the first thin film of soil where life can begin again. You imagine now the first drops of rain falling, tapping softly against the grey surface, little circles forming little rivulets, beginning to carve pathways through the ash, exposing hints of the rock below, creating tiny channels where water flows, carrying with it minerals released from the fresh volcanic material. This water, dark at first, heavy with fine dust, will soon begin the slow work of transformation, breaking down the hard edges, softening the land, nourishing the first roots that will one day grow here. As you drift lower, you can almost sense it, the invisible beginnings of life, microbes moving quietly hidden within the warmth of the ash, feeding on the minerals, starting the chain that will one day lead to green blossoms, to forests, to the return of animals and the hum of insects. The ash itself, though suffocating at first, holds within it a strange gift, for it is rich in nutrients, elements like potassium, phosphorus and iron, all essential for the growth of plants and the building blocks of life. What seems like an ending is in fact the foundation for new beginnings. In time, the rivers that once flowed with lava will become paths for water-cool streams winding between the black stone, their banks slowly turning green as moss takes hold, followed by grasses, shrubs, then trees. The land that seemed dead will pulse again with sound, with color, with movement. You float above a lava flow, now watching as its surface cools, cracking into sharp, jagged patterns like broken glass beneath. The surface, the rock, remains hot, glowing a dull red, but cooling hour by hour, day by day. Eventually, it will become basalt, dense, dark rock that forms the bones of new islands, the foundations of mountains, the solid ground upon which life will walk once more. In some places, the lava forms tubes, tunnels, where the outer surface cools and hardens, while the molten interior continues to flow, eventually leaving hollow passages beneath the ground. These lava tubes will one day become shelters for animals, safe spaces hidden within the landscape, carved by fire, yet destined to serve life. In the distance, the steam continues to rise, white clouds drifting where hot rock meets the last pockets of moisture underground. These plumes hiss and sigh, releasing the final breaths of the eruption, slowly fading as the heat diminishes, leaving behind only silence and the occasional rumble from deep below, a reminder that the earth never truly sleeps. Even now, beneath this quiet landscape, magma chambers refill slowly, patiently. Deep within the mantle, pressure begins once again to build. The cycle of fire is not finished, only resting for now. As you hover in this space between destruction and rebirth, you begin to understand how volcanoes are not merely endings, they are thresholds, gateways between what was and what will be. Fire reached, but it also prepares, making the land new, clearing the way for life to return, richer, stronger, more diverse than before. The trees that will grow here will be taller, the soils deeper, the ecosystems more vibrant, nourished by the very ash that once smothered everything in its path. The cycle is always the same: fire followed by silence, followed by life, followed once again by fire. As the last wisps of steam rise and fade into the air, you begin to wonder what comes next, how this landscape continues to evolve, how these forces shape not just this mountain but the entire world, and what quiet giants still sleep beneath the oceans, beneath the continents, waiting for their own moment to awaken and breathe. Trace the mountains, the islands, the fertile soils, all born of fire. Volcanoes are not only destroyers, they are builders of worlds. Lava becomes land. Ash becomes life-giving earth. Even your own body stands on ground shaped by ancient eruptions, a quiet reminder that fire creates as much as it destroys. As you float gently above the quiet land, once touched by fire, your mind begins to drift, not toward destruction, but toward creation, toward the quiet truth that volcanoes are not just forces of ending but also forces of beginning, shaping the very bones of the world beneath your feet. The mountains that rise in the distance, the islands that dot the oceans, the fertile soils that feed forests, fields and farms all carry the fingerprints of fire. Look closely and you will see it. A coastline born from the slow layering of lava flows, a valley rich with minerals released by ancient eruptions, a towering peak built one eruption at a time, reaching higher with every breath of the Earth's molten heart. You begin to sense how the planet itself is sculpted by these moments of fire, not in sudden, violent bursts alone, but through steady, patient building. Each eruption brings new material to the surface, fresh rock drawn from the depths, material that has not seen the sky for millions of years. Cooled lava forms, basalt strong, dark and heavy, the foundation for islands, continents, ocean floors. Much of the ocean's vast floor is made from this cooled volcanic rock, spreading outward from mid-ocean ridges where molten rock constantly emerges, creating new crust as the plates drift apart. Imagine walking along the shores of Hawaii, Iceland, the Galapagos, all places born from fire, their very existence a testament to the mantles. Slow, steady breathing volcanoes are nature's architects, shaping coastlines, building islands, raising mountains and forming archipelagos, chains of land linked, not by accident but by the deep quiet processes of the earth. As you float higher, you notice how even the soil beneath forests, fields and meadows owes its richness to this ancient fire. Volcanic ash, though destructive at first, breaks down quickly under the touch of rain and time, releasing a bounty of minerals that nourish life. Potassium, phosphorus, calcium, iron all flow from the fine grains of ash, feeding the roots of plants that will one day grow where lava once flowed. The world's most fertile soils are often volcanic, a paradox of creation rising from destruction. Consider the vineyards that flourish in the shadow of Mount Etna, the lush rice terraces that cling to the slopes of Indonesia, the green hills of Japan, the rolling farms of New Zealand, all fed by soil rich with the memory of fire. Even the air itself carries whispers of volcanoes, for long ago eruptions helped form Earth's early atmosphere, releasing gases trapped deep within the mantle, water vapor, carbon dioxide, sulfur, shaping the balance of air, oceans and climate that makes life possible. You begin to see how even the landscape beneath your own feet carries echoes of this deep history. Whether you live near a volcano or far from one, the continents themselves were shaped, lifted, split, and carried by forces driven in part by volcanic activity. The mountains that edged the continents, the ridges beneath the sea, the high plateaus, the island arcs, all formed as plates collided, pulled apart or slid over one another, with magma rising at every weakness. You hover now over a chain of islands, each one a dot in the ocean, each one the tip of a massive volcano rising from the seafloor far below. A reminder that most of Earth's volcanic activity happens not on land, but hidden beneath the waves, silent, unseen, yet constant, building mountains that never break the surface, or sometimes just barely. You drift lower, now tracing the pattern of a lava flow cooled into black ribbons that snake across the land, hardened into stone. These flows become barriers, rivers, walls, and sometimes they shape the course of rivers, redirecting streams, changing the shape of valleys, even creating new lakes where water becomes trapped behind natural dams of cooled rock. Every eruption is a sculptor, every flow a brushstroke painting the world in layers of stone and ash and mineral-rich dust. And it is not just the land that is shaped, but the ecosystems as well. Volcanic islands often begin as barren rock, lifeless, silent, but soon life arrives, seeds carried by wind or birds, Spores drifting through the air. Slowly the cracks in the rock collect water dust, organic fragments. The first plants take root, mosses, lichens, tiny pioneers that break the rock into soil, making way for grasses, shrubs, and eventually forests. The animals follow, insects first, then birds, then larger creatures drawn by the new land, by the promise of food and shelter. What began as fire becomes a sanctuary, a thriving cradle of life. You float higher, imagining how entire species have evolved. In isolation on volcanic islands, creatures found nowhere else in the world, shaped by the boundaries and opportunities of their fiery origins. The Galapagos Islands, the Hawaiian chain, the volcanic peaks of the South Pacific, each one a laboratory of evolution, a testament to how life adapts, transforms, flourishes given time, given space, given the chance, born from the aftermath of fire. Even deep beneath the ocean's volcanic vents, create ecosystems. Strange and beautiful hot water, rich with minerals, pours from cracks in the seafloor, feeding colonies of life that need no sunlight, no green leaves, only the chemical energy released by the earth itself. Tubeworms, clams, bacteria forming webs of life in the darkness, proof that where the earth breathes, life always finds a way. You hover now over a landscape that is both ancient and newborn. Fresh lava, cooled into rock still warm beneath. The surface yet already touched by wind, by water, by the first hints of life. The cycle continues. Endlessly lava becomes rock, rock becomes soil, soil feeds life. Life transforms the land, and eventually the land returns to fire, broken, weathered, subducted back into the mantle where it melts once again and begins the journey upward. You begin to feel how nothing on this planet is truly permanent. Every mountain, every island, every valley is part of a moving, breathing cycle of creation and transformation. The fire that once seemed only destructive reveals itself as one of the great forces of balance, a builder, a creator, a necessary part of Earth's ever-changing story. And as you drift quietly above this landscape, watching the slow, patient work of the planet, you begin to wonder if these forces are at work, not only on the continents, not only on the islands, but also beneath the vast oceans hidden from sight-shaping worlds. We rarely think about worlds that breathe fire far below the waves, waiting. Not all volcanoes sleep forever. Some wait in stillness for centuries, for millennia. Beneath calm mountains, molten chambers still breathe quietly. You stand near these silent giants, wondering, listening. Their silence is not forever. You find yourself now drifting through a landscape that feels quiet. Peaceful mountains rise around you, their slopes softened by time, covered in forests, snow or meadows depending on where you are. But beneath that quiet beauty something waits, hidden, a presence that does not sleep entirely but rests beneath the surface. You glide toward one of these mountains, a volcano that has not erupted for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. To the people living nearby, it is simply part of the horizon, a steady backdrop to life, a place for walking, climbing, watching sunsets, perhaps even a place of stories, legends, myths passed down through generations. But you know now that what appears silent on the surface is rarely still within. Beneath this mountain, the memory of fire remains. Deep chambers filled with molten rock still exist, slowly refilling over time, gathering heat, gathering gases, slowly breathing in the quiet dark. You float gently into this hidden space below the mountain, passing through layers of solid rock until you reach the warmth, the molten reservoir tucked deep within. It does not roar, it does not rush, it pulses slowly, a quiet glow of heat, surrounded by stone that has held it for longer than any human memory. This magma is thicker, cooler than that, found in active volcanoes, not yet ready to rise, but always waiting, always present. The earth is patient, its rhythms measured, not in hours or days, but in centuries, millennia, even longer. You sense how pressure builds slowly here, fed by the steady movement of the mantle beneath, by the subduction of one tectonic plate beneath another, by the water that slips down into the deep, lowering melting points and creating new pockets of magma that slowly accumulate generation after generation. You hover inside this chamber, sensing the delicate balance that holds it in check, the weight of the mountain above the strength of the surrounding rock, the temperature, the composition, the gases all working together to keep this giant asleep for now but not forever. You rise slowly now, moving back toward the surface where the mountain stands silent under the open sky. People walk its slopes unaware of the warmth. Deep below, some perhaps sense it in a way beyond words, a subtle hum beneath their feet, a warmth in certain stones, a strange place where steam sometimes rises even when the air is cold. Here and there vents appear, tiny cracks that allow gases to escape: sulfur, steam, carbon dioxide, the breath of the sleeping giant rising in thin wisps that fade into the wind, a reminder that the volcano is not gone, only waiting. Some dormant volcanoes sleep for 10,000 years, others for 50,000, some for even longer, but geological time always moves forward, and eventually the conditions shift, the magma gathers, the pressure rises, until one day, the mountain will stir again, and the world above will change. You float now from one mountain to another, tracing a line of sleeping giants across the planet, each different in size, shape, and story, yet all sharing this hidden life. Mount Fuji in Japan, a symbol of beauty and peace, yet still inactive. Volcano beneath Mount Rainier in the United States, towering snow-capped, holding deep reserves of glacial ice perched above a molten chamber that could one day awaken. Mount Tide in the Canary Islands, Mount Taranaki in New Zealand, Mount Kilimanjaro in Africa. Each one a sentinel of deep time, a monument to the balance between silence and fire. You glide lower, tracing the cracks, the faults, the hidden pathways that connect the surface to the deep, knowing that while the mountain rests, the processes beneath never truly stop. The mantle flows, the plates shift, the magma rises, sometimes slowly, sometimes with sudden unstoppable force. You notice how scientists monitor these volcanoes, listening carefully to the Earth's subtle whispers. Tiny earthquakes, deep tremors, changes in gas emissions, the swelling of the land itself as pressure builds. These are the gentle signs that a sleeping giant is stirring, not yet awake, but shifting, turning, sensing the growing tension within. You imagine standing on the slope of one of these mountains, feeling the ground firm beneath your feet, the air cool, the sky open and blue, and yet knowing deep inside that beneath you the magma still breathes. You sense how the people who live near these places carry a quiet respect, sometimes a fear, sometimes a deep reverence for the mountain that watches over them, for they live not just beside stone but beside something alive, something that remembers, something that waits. As you float above these resting peaks, the thought begins to form that dormancy is not absence, it is only a pause, a breath held between movements, between the chapters of the Earth's long story. The forests that now cover the slopes, the rivers that flow, the towns and villages, all exist in this in-between space, resting on land, shaped by ancient eruptions, waiting in the long quiet. Before the next awakening, you begin to wonder how many sleeping giants lie not only upon the land, but also beneath the oceans, hidden from sight, building pressure slowly beneath the waves, where fire and water meet, where eruptions happen unseen, shaping islands before they ever break the surface, waiting. You have traveled through Earth's fiery heart, you have floated through sleeping mountains and molten worlds, but now your mind begins to drift in another direction, toward something even more mysterious. Time itself. Can we move forward faster than the ticking clock around us? Could we visit the future, not as a thought, but as a real place waiting ahead? As you close your eyes and let your breath slow, the question begins to grow in your mind, a gentle curiosity stirring deeper than before. You are used to thinking of time as something steady, something constant, a quiet river flowing always forward, never stopping, never changing. Yet science tells a different story. Time is not as rigid as it seems. It bends, it stretches, it can move differently depending on where you are, how fast you are traveling, or how close you are to the immense pull of gravity. Imagine now drifting far above the Earth, higher still until the blue fades into the blackness of space. From this view, the planet spins below, wrapped in thin clouds, turning slowly under the soft glow of the sun. And as you float here free from the weight of the ground, you begin to understand that time itself behaves differently for you than it does for someone standing on the surface down there. The seconds tick forward as always, but up here, where gravity holds you more loosely, those same seconds stretch out just a little bit longer. This is not a trick or a theory, it is a real measurable truth predicted by Einstein and proven by experiments with satellites and atomic clocks. Gravity slows time. The stronger the pull, the slower time moves, and the farther you are from that pull, the faster it flows. Now drift your mind further. Imagine yourself aboard a spacecraft, moving faster and faster, accelerating toward a significant fraction of the speed of light. The stars begin to shift, stretching into lines as the universe warps around you, and something astonishing happens. Time for you slows down compared to everyone you left behind. A year for you could be 10 years for them. A day for you could be months for the people still back on Earth. This is not science fiction, this is time dilation, the real stretching of time itself based on speed and gravity. The faster you move, the more time bends, the more the future becomes, something you approach not step by step, but in great leaps. You float with this idea, letting it settle like a soft ripple in a still pond, wondering what it means to move through time too. Visit the future not as imagination, but as a physical place woven into the fabric of reality. You imagine now astronauts traveling to a distant star, moving near the speed of light. They return home to find the Earth transformed. Decades have passed. For those on the ground, while only a few years passed for them, they have, in a very real way, stepped into the future, leaving behind the present, and arriving in a world that has continued forward without them. You begin to feel how strange yet comforting it is that time is not a universal constant, but a personal experience, measured by movement, and distance, and gravity itself. The ticking of a clock on your wrist, the beating of your heart, all depend on where you are, and how you move through the universe. Drift now toward an even deeper thought. What about black holes, those mysterious giants, whose gravity is so strong that not even light can escape? As you imagine approaching one, hovering near the edge of its invisible boundary, called the event horizon, you sense something extraordinary. Time itself slows nearly to a stop, for you hovering so close, while for the rest of the universe time races ahead. If you could survive there and then drift away back to safety, you would emerge into a future far beyond the one you left behind. You float with this idea, watching the black hole spin its dark presence. Bending starlight, pulling space itself into its core, a place where time and reality begin to blur and fade back away. Now letting that gravity release, you feeling time return to something closer to the rhythm you know, yet forever changed by the realization that time is not a single river, but countless streams, flowing at different speeds depending on where you stand and how you move. As you drift back toward Earth, you begin to wonder, is visiting the future only possible through these extreme cosmic tricks? High speeds, massive gravity, distant stars, or could time itself offer other pathways, softer, more gentle routes, hidden within the very laws of nature? You'd think of the way we already travel into the future, in the simplest way, simply by existing every second, moving forward, carried by the steady unfolding of the universe itself. Every heartbeat, every breath, is a step into the future, the simplest journey of all. But is there a way to step further, faster, to glimpse the far tomorrow without the weight you remember now? How even particles in high-energy labs experience time differently. Particles accelerated, close to the speed of light, live longer than they would at rest, their tiny lifetimes stretched by their speed, their future extended by motion. You imagine building a spacecraft capable of such speeds, a vessel that becomes a time machine, not by magic, but by the laws of physics. A family aboard could travel to a star system 10 light-years away, moving fast enough that only a few years pass for them. But when they return, a century could have passed back home. They would meet the future face to face. They would see a world changed by the passing of years, a world that grew older while they stayed almost the same. This is not a doorway to the past, it is a one-way journey into the future, a gift of physics, a bending of time woven into the universe itself. You feel now how strange and how beautiful it is that the future is not just an idea, but something real, something waiting, something already written into the fabric of space-time itself, a place you could visit, if only you could. Ride the right wave of gravity or speed drift, now back toward the Earth. Your home glowing beneath you, wrapped in clouds, turning slowly under the stars, and you begin to wonder, if time is this flexible, this strange, this alive, then what does it mean for the future of the Earth, for the future of the mountains and oceans, the rivers and forests, the volcanoes that sleep, and the ones that breathe fire? Does the future hold only waiting, or does it hold change, growth, renewal, just as the planet itself moves in cycles of fire and rebirth? And as you drift lower toward the gentle curve of the world, you cannot help but wonder what secrets the flow of time might still hold hidden beneath the waves, waiting in the quiet dark places where fire still lives. Time never turns backward, it only flows forward, step by step, breath by breath. An invisible current that carries everything, stars and rivers, mountains and memory, even you. Everything moves with it, always forward, never back. As you float now in this quiet space between thought and wonder, you begin to feel something deeper, something steady, something that has been with you since the very beginning of your journey. Through fire, through stone, through the mysteries of time, it is the simple truth That time flows only one way, no matter how it bends, no matter how it stretches, it never reverses, never rewinds. It moves forward, always forward, carrying everything in its gentle, silent hands. You drift above the earth, watching the clouds spiral over the oceans, the mountains casting long shadows across the valleys, and you realize how everything you see is part of this forward flow. A tree grows leaf by leaf, never backward. A river carves a canyon, grain by grain, never undone. A volcano erupts, then quiets, but the lava never flows back into the mountain. What is done becomes the past, held only in memory, in rock, in light, but never lived again. You begin to sense how time itself is not a thing but a direction, a gentle asymmetry woven into the fabric of the universe itself. A cup of hot tea cools, but it never heats itself. A stone falls, but never rises on its own. A fire burns, but the ashes do not leap back into flame. This is not because of chance, but because of something deeper, a law written into the very bones of reality called entropy. The measure of how things move from order to disorder, from concentrated energy to spread out gentle, quiet calm. The arrow of time is not just about clocks ticking, it is about how the universe evolves, how energy disperses, how mountains wear down, how stars burn through their fuel, how the heat of an eruption eventually fades into the cool silence that follows. Look now at the ocean below, waves rising and falling, sculpted by wind and gravity. Each wave, a moment never repeated, never reversed. The water molecules flow forward, carried by currents driven by heat from the sun, by the turning of the earth, by the pull of the moon, and all of this is time made visible, made tangible, a pattern that only exists because yesterday cannot become today again. You drift higher, feeling how the stars themselves obey this rule, how they form from clouds of gas, burn bright for millions, even billions of years, and then slowly release their energy into space, becoming something else, a white dwarf, a neutron star, sometimes a black hole, but never what they were before. This gentle falling forward, this unfolding, this letting go, is the rhythm of everything, even the volcanoes that shape the earth. The magma rises, it cools, it becomes rock, the rock weathers, breaks, returns to the mantle, melted, reborn, but never in reverse. The process is circular, yes, but the circle always moves forward like the hands of a clock, like the growth of a tree ring upon ring, telling the story of time past, not time returned. You imagine now the light itself, photons traveling across the universe, carrying the image of galaxies from billions of years ago. That light moves forward to a snapshot of the past, but always carried into the future, never backward. Even the atoms in your body carry this story, forged in ancient stars, scattered into space, woven into planets, into life, into you, carried forward by the current of time. You are part of this too. Your own heartbeat, your own breath, a quiet ticking forward, a journey that cannot reverse. Yet within this forward flow, there is comfort because every step builds, every moment becomes part of something greater. You begin to sense that the forward flow of time is not loss, but transformation. The lava becomes stone, the stone becomes soil, the soil feeds forests, the forests feed life, and life becomes memory, and motion, and new beginnings. There is beauty in knowing that nothing stays still, that change is the nature of everything, and that within this constant change there is growth, there is becoming. You drift now over the continents, watching how rivers trace their paths, how mountains rise and wear down, how deserts shift, how glaciers move, each carrying the memory of time written in their shapes, in their lines, in their layers. The earth itself holds the story of time within its stones, within its cycles. Each volcano, each eruption, each quiet resting mountain, a chapter in the endless unfolding of forward-moving time. You wonder now about the future, about how the volcanoes still sleeping will one day wake, how new islands will rise from the sea, how old mountains will crumble, how the earth will continue its quiet breathing, shaping, changing, never still, always moving forward. You realize now that your journey through fire, through stone, through time has been a journey into understanding how deeply connected everything is, not just in space but in time, how the past becomes the present, how the present becomes the future, and how the future is always waiting, shaped by every breath, every wave, every heartbeat. Every volcano holds the memory of eruptions long past and the promise of eruptions yet to come. Every seed holds the memory of the tree that came before and the shape of the forest that will follow. And so too do you carry within you the memories of all that has come before and the quiet unfolding of all that is yet to be. You float gently now, letting this truth settle around you like a warm blanket, like a soft current carrying you forward through the sea of stars, through the flow of time itself. Always onward, always becoming, always part of this vast, gentle, beautiful universe that never looks back, only forward.